Welcome everyone, StealthyShiroean here, and today I'm bringing you my review of the Humble Choice bundle for September 2025. Coming off a Humble Choice high from last month, I think it was expected that it wasn't going to last. However, if it's the headliners that are scaring you away, then stick around because there might be a few others that could change your mind. As always, let me know what you think of this month's bundle in the comments below, be sure to check the timestamps for specific games, and stay tuned for my final thoughts in the end. Okay, let's get to the review. Starting off the review, we're taking a look at Grapple Dog, which is a platformer that does exactly what it states on the tin. You're a dog, and you could grapple onto things to swing and get to hard to reach areas. And that's really it. The game itself is fun and is really solid. The controls were great, and the grappling mechanic felt fine. Levels seem well thought out and were smart in introducing new things to the player, and then challenging them later with what they learn. There are plenty of collectibles and secrets to find to encourage replayability, and I liked the overall soundtrack in each of the levels I played. Outside of that, there is a story, albeit it felt more perfunctory rather than anything interesting, and the graphics are all presentable. But man, I really don't know what else to say about this game. It hasn't done anything different to set itself apart, and just about everything in the game we've seen here before. I'd say this is just one for those platformer enthusiasts who want one more challenge to conquer or time trial to beat. And for all others, well, you've probably played this game before. But maybe that's a good thing for you. I'll also add and say that I'm not usually into platformers, so that may be another reason why I wasn't too terribly impressed with Grapple Dog. What marks our third Warhammer 40k title this year, we have Warhammer 40k Speed Freeks. As the name sort of implies, it's a racing title, but it'd be more apt to call it a battle racing title. And actually, maybe just a battle driving title, because racing isn't really the focus here unless you count racing to capture the metaphorical flag or racing towards your next kill. Although there is a mode that does have some racing, but it's in the middle of everyone trying to blow one another up. The racing is more of an optional thing, and it seemed dependent on which car you were using. I only played this mode once, and it was a bit confusing as to what was going on at first. What it seems to be is that there are points to capture which give your team points, races that could start with a series of checkpoints that give you points, and then of course destroying enemy cars will give you points. And basically, all of this is happening at the same time. Instead, I much preferred the game's other mode, which is a mix of capture the flag and escort. Both teams need to capture bombs and then use them on the enemy's giant robot, or something known as a Stampa, and if the enemy has the bomb, then you need to try and stop them from destroying your own. It was a lot of fun and slightly more straightforward to figure out what I should be doing. Actually, capturing the bombs and taking them to the goal reminded me a lot of Rocket League, just with a lot more guns. Speed Freeks was surprisingly a lot of fun. I was a bit worried since it only seemed to be online multiplayer, and the numbers, as told by Steam charts, are quite low with less than 100 people per day. Luckily, you could set up matches with bots, which is what I did. However, I do wonder what might happen if they decide to shut down servers, since I'm fairly certain you need to be online in order to even set up a bot match. All that said, I think it's worth a try if it looks interesting. Eastern Exorcist is a 2D side-scrolling action RPG set in a world presumably inspired by Chinese lore and mythology. At the start of the game, you select which character you'd like to play as, and initially, I just assumed the only difference would be whether or not you wanted to play as a guy or gal, and what weapon your character used. And yeah, that's part of it, but they actually have completely different stories depending on who you pick. I have no idea if it's just for the beginning and the characters meet up and it's relatively the same no matter who you choose, or if they're two completely separate stories. Either way, I thought it was a nice touch. With the guy, he's an exorcist who made the wrong call and now has to deal with the guilt of getting his comrades killed. And with the half-demon girl, she's racing against the clock to find a cure for her dying brother. At the outset, both of these stories seemed fine and could be interesting. However, the dialogue felt really weird at times. Although, as I'm not fluent in Chinese, I'm uncertain if it's a bad translation, or if it's that the writing is bad in general. That aside, I liked the painterly aesthetic to the graphics, and the gameplay was solid. The combat is dependent on stamina to attack, dodge, etc. However, there are a lot of specialized attacks you can do for certain situations, like a charge attack to break through a block, or a parry and counter to do massive damage. There's also a slash attack that you can do with a well-timed combo. With the guy, I thought the timing window was challenging to get right consistently, but the girl was a lot easier to hit her combo. So if you're looking for an easier go of it, then maybe start the game as the half-demon. Despite the iffy story, I really enjoyed playing this game, and I'm curious to see how the combat evolves with the skills and equipables you'll get through a playthrough.
I don't need you or your money.
Next up is Return to Monkey Island, which is a sequel to the long-running franchise, albeit with an over 10-year gap in between this game and its previous installment. For those who don't know, Return to Monkey Island follows in the path of its predecessors as a point-and-click adventure game. This means quite a bit of dialogue, finding random objects, and using them to solve puzzles. On the story side of things, Monkey Island offers comedic elements in its storytelling that, while silly, didn't feel overdone to me, and I quite enjoyed it. The voice acting was excellent and really helped me keep me immersed in what was happening.
I can skip over the hugs and kisses. Elaine!
Guybrush!
I was hoping you'd turn up in this story.
I was hoping you'd turn up in mine.
Obviously, as a game in a long-running franchise following the same character, well, there's bound to be a lot of things a player wouldn't know if they've never played the original games, like myself. Return to Monkey Island tries to help mitigate this issue by providing a scrapbook from the main menu that sorta sums up Guybrush Threepwood's previous adventures, which mainly introduces you to his nemesis, his friends and allies met along the way, and some of the things he's done with them. It did provide some background, but I still couldn't help feeling like someone who didn't get an inside joke that was just told. So obviously, playing the previous games is probably the best way to experience this franchise, rather than jumping in at this point. Overall, I thought it was decent, but even more so than platformers, point-and-click adventures just aren't for me. Normally this is because of the frustrating puzzles with convoluted solutions. Luckily though, Return to Monkey Island has 2 difficulty modes, with casual being something that seems to favor the story over any brain-bending puzzles. Obviously, if you're a fan of this franchise and don't already have Return to Monkey Island, then it's a no-brainer. For anyone else interested, I guess either be prepared to not fully understand all the context, or go back and play the rest of the games before returning to Return to Monkey Island.
Think of it as a book of hints.
Having never played a Spellforce game before, but knowing that the series is known for its unique blend of RPG meets real-time strategy, I was excited to get Spellforce Conquest of Eo this month, and finally try it myself. So, you can imagine why I was a bit disappointed to find out that this game doesn't actually feature real-time strategy combat, but instead is a tactical turn-based spin-off. That said, I wasn't that disappointed since Conquest of Eo seems like a good game. Although, I can only rate my hour off the tutorial, of which I didn't even finish completely. What the tutorial showed me was a decent combat system that introduced you to the standard affair of various unit types, and how to counter certain things through the use of proper unit management, spells, and tactical prowess on the battlefield. It's fun, and if you played something like Age of Wonders, then you probably know what you're getting into. I wish I could comment more about the rest of the game, being the economic management and overworld gameplay, but once again, I'm thwarted by my own review limitations. However, if you'd like to get a better picture, then excuse me while I plug Humble Talk, a podcast where myself and fellow creator Deckhead play these games past our initial reviews, and hopefully provide a fuller picture as to what we think about them. Outside of that, all I can say is that my first impression of the game was good, and I definitely want to put more time into it. The Plucky Squire is a charming adventure game that follows a storybook and has some neat ideas for puzzle solving. Its obvious inspiration that it wears on its sleeve is The Legend of Zelda. In fact, it reminded me a lot of last month's Little Gator game, the difference being this game's presentation. It starts as a storybook being read aloud and the player controlling the actions of Jot, the Plucky Squire. He's trying to stop the evil sorcerer Humgrump, who's up to no good. Along the way, players will have to combat the baddies in a fairly simple combat system that pretty much copies the notes of a 2D Zelda, as mentioned. Puzzle solving has some interesting additions, with the player needing to move words around in sentences to change the environment. Eventually, Humgrunt pushes Jot out of his book, and there is a bit of a link between worlds going on as the player gains the ability to move between a 2D and a 3D world. However, all of these challenges are fairly simple and nothing too complicated. In fact, I'd say the game is definitely marketed as more of a family game, or kids game, which once again is very similar to Little Gator Game. I'd say that if you enjoyed that last one, then you probably will like this one as well. Or if you have a kid, then this one is probably worth it too. I haven't played it with my daughter yet, but I imagine I will in the near future. In the penultimate spot, we have the controversial Destiny 2, which is actually a free-to-play game, but obviously you need to pay for the DLC. The Legacy Collection comes with a bunch of older DLC, but not all of it because apparently Bungie has gotten rid of some of its old content, as in 100% removed it, and no one can play it again even if you paid for it. Yikes. Before I go any further though, I really don't know much about the state of Destiny 2 or any of its controversies, whether poor decisions from Bungie or shoddy DLC. I had played the game for a few hours years ago and thought it was enjoyable, but never actually committed. And now I have the time that I played it for this review. And it's more or less what I remember. Yeah, they don't have that epic opening of the city or whatever it was being attacked like it used to be, but instead they have, well, something less epic, but gameplay-wise it was still fun. The moment-to-moment combat is something that I think Bungie has done well and continues to do well here. Even in my first hour, I had access to several types of weapons, even a sword, which isn't a gun, but was still fun to mow enemies down with. Basically, the gameplay was great. I can't tell you how the rest of the story is, or what's up with any of the DLC, side content, endgame content, or literally anything else. Obviously, you'll need to check out a dedicated review for that. I still enjoyed my time with this, and if anything, it convinced me to keep it installed so I could play some more. Although, I'm not sure if I'll even play the game long enough to experience the DLC that we got in this bundle, or maybe Bungie will eventually cut these older DLCs as well. Who knows?
Quite simply, the greatest of all time, John Cena.
And finally, we have the headliner for the month, the one, the only, WWE 2K25. So, yeah, it's a wrestling game. My thoughts on this are about the same as when we received the 2023 edition a couple years ago. I'm inexperienced with this kind of game, still inexperienced with WWE, and essentially have no real interest. So, I'm not the target audience here. From what I could tell, it seems more of the same as before. You have a ton of different modes, along with a ton of different fighters, which probably is a good roster for fans of WWE, or maybe it isn't, I don't know. This time, instead of exploring any of these modes, the only thing I really did was continually do 1v1 matches between The Rock and John Cena, because those are pretty much the only two names I know in WWE. I mean, I did attempt some of the tutorial, but then quickly decided I'd just button mash and see where it got me. Well, playing as The Rock, I fought John Cena on 3 different occasions, and pretty much lost every time. But I feel like I got close a couple times. Although, I have no idea how John Cena pulled this off in my first bout with him. That said, I really didn't have any idea how I was doing a lot of the stuff. Again, I didn't do the tutorial, so I don't really think that was the game's fault. Anyway, this is probably a pretty easy game to determine if it's something for you. Obviously, I won't be returning to this, just as I never returned to WWE 2K23.
John Cena knew if he was going to beat The Rock, he'd have...
Okay, let's wrap this up and see if this bundle is worth it or not. I based my rating solely on whether I thought the game was worth playing on about an hour or so of hands-on gameplay. Also, I'd be grateful if you could please give the video a like if you're enjoying it, and subscribe if you want to see more video game coverage in the form of reviews, first impressions, and of course, these humble choice videos every month. Overall, yeah, this was not that great of a month. I normally wouldn't say skip a month, but I definitely understand why a lot would. I think it's easy to think that after the amazing bundle we had last month with Persona 5, and honestly, a great supporting cast of games. Here, it's much more hit and miss, and there's not one or even two titles that definitively sell the bundle. That said, I'm definitely happy to have gotten at least a couple of these, but the rest will probably just sit around and gather virtual dust. With that, let's get to the final recommendations. And so, let's start at the top with the must-plays of the month, and this month we have, well, unfortunately nothing. While I did have fun playing most of these games, none of them stood out to me as something that I would drop everything just to play it right away. Doesn't always happen, but sometimes the month just lands like that. Moving on to my strong recommendations, I placed the Plucky Squire, Warhammer 40k Speed Freeks, and yes, Destiny 2. The Plucky Squire was almost something I'd put under must play, but I know that I'll probably only get around to playing this game with my daughter. There's nothing wrong with that, but the game's simplicity in story and gameplay makes this something I probably wouldn't pick up and play by myself. Speed Freeks was a game that I didn't really expect to like, and well, it's just a lot of fun. I think it's a great game to scratch that itch for when I want something different. It's hectic, but in a good way. Destiny 2 feels a bit weird to place here, if only because it's a free-to-play game. I'm fairly certain I didn't see any of the game's DLC content that you're paying for in the bundle, so I'm essentially saying try out this free game. I did have fun with it though, so that's why it goes here. In my week recommendations, I placed Spellforce Conquest of Eo, Eastern Exorcist, Return to Monkey Island, and Grapple Dog. This Spellforce title did seem like a solid game, but with tactical turn-based fights, I can't help but feel like it's similar to many other games like it on the market. In contrast to the mainline Spellforce games, which sound really interesting with its blend of RPG meets RTS. Eastern Exorcist delivered fun combat, but fell kind of hard with its weak storytelling. On the other hand, Return to Monkey Island delivers quality storytelling, but I couldn't help but feel a bit lost when playing because of my lack of experience with the franchise. Finally, Grapple Dog was one of those games that seemed to do everything right, and it was acceptable, which is why it didn't end up in the Don't Bother With, but at the same time, the game didn't really excel in anything. Originally, I was going to defer to my past thoughts on WWE 2K23 that we got almost 2 years ago, which was basically me giving the game the benefit of the doubt since others have said it was a good WWE game, and I don't know enough to say otherwise. This time around, it seems that this year's version sits only at a mixed rating on Steam, and I don't feel so bad about placing 2K25 in Don't Bother With. It's just not my thing, and it also seems that as far as the WWE games go, you'd be better off picking up the 2K24 version that sits at mostly positive. Do you agree with my thoughts? What games, if any, are you looking forward to playing? Let me know what your thoughts are, or if there are any different recommendations you'd make in the comments below. I hope this video helped you in some small way, and if it did, then please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.